Hello everyone. So, in this class I am going to discuss the chapters of hydrosphere. Chapters of hydrosphere are very important, and as I told you that 4 particular chapters are related here with our syllabus. So, we will discuss all those 4 chapters one by one. And first of all, before I start and deal with the chapters, here I would like to tell you something about hydrosphere that we all know, but I am just repeating all those. Okay. See, when we say hydrosphere, all of you know, hydrosphere means the region of water. Hydro means water, so the region of water is called as hydrosphere. And particularly on the surface of the earth, as we know that on the surface of the earth we have two kinds of surfaces. One of the surfaces called as continental surface, as you know, continental surface, and the continental part or the continental surface covers almost 21% part of the 29%, not 21, 29% part of the earth's surface. Then we have left with 71% part. So, this 71% part is covered by oceans. 71% part is covered by oceans. So, we have two parts, I told you. One of the part is continental part, another part is oceanic part. Now, since we are going to discuss this hydrosphere, it does not mean we have to discuss about the water. No, it is not actually the water. We have different aspects which we will see or which we will discuss about the oceans and seas. When we see this oceanic region from the above, obviously we can find only the surface, got it? But apart from the surface, if we enter, see, it is the oceanic surface, right? See, it is the oceanic surface. So, from the above we can see only the water, but when we enter the oceanic region, we can find that there are certain irregularities found inside the ocean. We have certain region of the continent which is extended towards the oceanic region, and we can see certain changes in this oceanic region, right, in this way. So, we have so many of parts, and not only this, if we see some of the parts, so some mountainous or hilly kind of things are also present there inside the oceans, right. Hills and mountains are also there inside the ocean. So, as on the continental part we can see the total land with so many of irregularities, like you can say we have mountains, we have plateaus, we have hills, we have plain region, and we have discussed all these things, that what kind of percentage is found there in our country and particularly in the world also. So, there, if the continental part is having so many of things, so many of irregularities, those irregularities are called as the relief features of the continents. So, since we are discussing relief features here inside the ocean, these are called as the reliefs of the ocean basin, and this is the first part, this is the first chapter we will discuss here under the hydrosphere according to our syllabus. So, what we will discuss here? We will discuss here the reliefs of ocean basin, the reliefs of ocean basin. I will tell you that what kind of relief features are there under the ocean part, but here we will discuss all those parts with their characteristics, because these characteristics have been asked in your examination. Okay. And some of the facts are also there, some examples can also be asked to you. Okay. So, the first chapter is the reliefs of ocean basin. Now come to the second chapter. The second chapter deals with two of the physical phenomena. One is temperature and second is salinity. Temperature and salinity of oceans and seas. This is the second part. In this part, we will see what is the trend of distribution of temperature there, from where the sea part or the oceanic part or the oceanic water actually is getting temperature, and how this temperature get distributed, what are the factors which basically affects the temperature conditions. So, this part is related to that. And the second aspect which we can see, especially with the oceans and seas, with the water of oceans and seas, that is the salinity. As we all know that so much of amount of salt is getting dissolved in the oceanic water and sea water, that amount of salt makes up the salinity of the ocean water. And there we will see that what is the trend of salinity also, how the salinity get distributed in the ocean water and sea water, and what is the trend of salinity there. So, we will see all those factors in this chapter, right. Okay. Then come to the third chapter. What is that third chapter? The third chapter is related to tides. Tides is a very important phenomena. Tides are very important phenomena. Here we will see and we will understand that in a particular manner, when the sea water, the sea surface water or the ocean surface water is getting increased and moved towards the coastal region due to certain forces. So, in that way tides are developed, and these tides are very important phenomena. We will see here some of the major aspects regarding that, when the tides will be found with maximum height, when the tides are with the lower height, what are the factors behind that, which gravitational force or which heavenly body is putting some force on the earth surface or on the water surface of the oceans and seas, and so that they can be pulled, right. So, all these things, all these phenomena have been discussed under the chapter of tides. Apart from this, the fourth chapter is completely factual. It is completely factual. Only something in the start, one point is important there, and this is what, as we have seen in the part of tides, that how tides are originated. In that way, we can say in this chapter, ocean currents. In this chapter, we will see that how ocean currents are developed, what factors are basically affecting ocean currents, in what ways we will see the ocean current in the ocean. But particularly, if you go through the previous year question, there you can find that so many of ocean currents are there on the basis of their temperature. One of the basis which is taken for the temperature, taken in the form of temperature, there you can find that actually on the basis of the temperature condition of ocean water, we can differentiate these ocean currents into two parts, the warm ocean current and the cold ocean current. And there you will understand that since we have three major oceans in the world or on the earth surface, which are basically having these kind of ocean currents, these kind of movement of water in them. So, particularly for the Pacific Ocean, for the Atlantic Ocean and for the Indian Ocean, we will see the names, different names of the ocean currents and their locations in these oceans particularly. And so many of times UPSC has asked questions regarding the ocean currents. So, these are the factual things we will discuss there. So, these are the 4 particular chapters we will discuss one by one. Okay. Now, since I was talking about the first chapter, that is related to the relief features, I am again writing the name here, reliefs of ocean basin. So, under this chapter we will see different kinds of relief features. I told you that relief features are actually irregularities. So, we will discuss all those relief features in 2 categories. What are those 2 categories? So, the reliefs of the ocean basins can be divided into 2 parts. One of the part is called as major reliefs. Major reliefs. These major reliefs form a larger part in the oceans, inside the ocean water. These are the larger part. They are the basic and the most important, most significant part. This does not mean that the other relief features are not significant. Obviously, they are also significant, but these portions cover a larger part in the oceanic region, right. So, that is why they are called as major relief features. Under the major relief features, if you see the names, so some names which I hope that you will be familiar are continental shelf, continental slope, continental rise, actually this part of continental rise is, you can say, the end part of the continental slope, but I have taken here this part separately, right. So, continental rise here. The fourth you can write here is the deep sea plains. Or you can call it as abyssal plain also, we will see later, right. And the fifth is called as ocean deeps or trenches. Ocean deeps or trenches. These are the 5 major part under the major reliefs, right, under the major reliefs of ocean basin, right. The second portion you can see here is the minor relief. Now, minor reliefs when we talk, so obviously they are not covering large areas under the ocean water. They are covering small area, or you can say they may be the part of these major relief features. That is why they are called as minor. So, here we will see the first and very important, very significant, as I told you that these are also significant. So, one of the basic is mid-oceanic ridges. Mid-oceanic ridges are here, right. These mid-oceanic ridges are very significant part and found particularly in all the 3 major oceans, like the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. There you can find these mid-oceanic ridges. As the term ridges are taken here, ridges actually taken with the series of mountains. So, obviously, these are also the series of mountains, but since they are present in the oceanic region, in the almost in the middle of the oceanic region, that is why they have been named as the mid-oceanic ridges. Got it? Okay. Second important feature which you can find here is basically related to a kind of mountain. These are called as seamounts and guyots. Seamounts and guyots are again very important feature. Why they are important? Because these seamounts and guyots are actually the mountains and the hills which are present on the major part of the oceans. These are as much similar as we can see mountains and hills on the continental part. Okay. The third part you can see here is the submarine canyons. Again, word submarine is used, that means underwater, under the marine region. And what are these features? So, these features are called as submarine canyons. Canyons, I am using the term, canyons are here, right. So, these are submarine canyons. Canyons we have seen on the continental part like the Grand Canyon, and we have seen on the continental part that these canyons are actually the form of valley, one of the form of valley. But these canyons under the sea water are found in a particular region, in a particular location. So, there we will discuss when we see the characteristics of these canyons. There we will discuss that in what way these canyons are formed inside the ocean water, right. In that we will see. And the fourth thing you can see here, is a very important feature that is related to coral reefs, that is called as atolls, right. So, these are the 4 minor relief features we will see here under the chapter of reliefs of ocean basin, apart from the major reliefs, right. So, one by one we will discuss all these things, and there you will find out that what are the characteristics of these features, okay. So, here I am taking some PDFs. With the PDFs it will be helpful for you, you can note it down very carefully, and I will also provide you the PDFs, the notes in the form of PDF. So, you have the ample thing to understand, right. Okay. So, first of all, here we will see that if, as we have seen on the continental part, that continental parts are not featureless parts, they have so many of irregularities. Likewise, oceans are again not a flat or featureless plane, right. Ocean floor is not a flat or featureless plane. Obviously, so many of relief features, so many of irregularities are also found inside the ocean water. I have discussed you earlier, okay. So, under the relief features, first of all we have the continental shelf, right, the continental shelf, and here we will discuss what are these continental shelves and how these continental shelves form the parts in the ocean basin, right. These are the continental shelf. So, first of all see this diagram, and from here you can understand the things easily, okay. See this diagram. With the help of this diagram you can see that actually it is the continental crust, and you can see that the continental crust is not only confined to the continental part, the continental crust extends to the seawater, extend towards the oceanic region, and it enters the oceanic region. The second thing you can see in this diagram, that this continental crust is also having oceanic crust. After the continental crust, we have also the part of crust in the form of oceanic crust. If you remember the chapter of structure of the earth, right. So, there we have discussed that the uppermost layer, the uppermost solid layer of the earth is called as crust, and that crust has been divided into 2 parts, the continental crust and the oceanic crust. When we say continental crust, so it is that part which is covered mostly by the continental part. This does not mean that it only or it exclusively covers the continental part. No, if we are saying continental crust, that means it is the part of the crust which is mostly covered by the continental part. So, in this way you can say that obviously if this is the continental crust, so this continental crust has a gentle sloping region, and this gently sloping region is, with this gently sloping region, it is extended towards the seawater. Now, this line is showing the sea level. So, here you can say we have a certain part of continental crust that extends towards the seawater, and when it extends towards the seawater, it is a gently sloping region. What kind of region? It is a gently sloping region. This gently sloping region is defined on the basis of the slope gradient, you can say. So for the continental shelf, it is said that continental shelf is having gentle slope gradient. So it is having gentle slope gradient. It is having gentle slope gradient, and the slope gradient is defined. See, book to book it varies, but here I am taking and I am telling you both the data which is given in the NCERT book and in most of the reference books, right. So in the NCERT, if you go, it is given that it is 1 degree or less. Where it is given? It is given in NCERT, right. But if we see the slope gradient particularly, so practically it is found that the slope gradient of the continental shelf is found between, right, it is found between 1 degree to 3 degree, right. It is the actual slope gradient here. So with this slope gradient, the continental crust extended under the sea water or under the ocean water, right. So when you can say, as we can see, if you have a large table there, or you can say some cupboard there at your house, so some shelf can be extended from the cupboard if you have seen anywhere. So that kind of thing is basically taken here to understand this portion of the ocean relief, right. So in that way you can say an extension of the continental crust is moving towards the oceanic region, that is called as continental shelf. The things which you have to remember here, I am repeating here, I will show later on that what are the important characteristics here. First of all, the continental shelf is the part of the continental crust, right. Second thing is its gentle slope gradient, that is 1 degrees to 3 degrees, but in NCERT it is given that 1 degrees or less, right. Okay. The third thing you can find here, that if since it is an extended part of the continental crust, so the river water which is moving towards the sea and drains into it, it carries huge amount of sediment with it, and that huge amount of sediment, large part of that huge amount of sediment can be deposited here on the continental shelf, because it is a gently sloping region. So those sediments can be easily deposited on the continental shelf region, right. So in that way you can discuss this. Okay. Now one can say, if the sediments are deposited one over another, one over another, one over another, so what will happen? With the passage of time, or you can say in millions of years, these can be deposited there, and they after lithification they can be converted into sedimentary rocks. And if you say that these sediments are having so much of organic material, so that organic material can be converted into certain fossil fuels. So this is the significance of the continental shelf region. Okay, what you remember here, that continental shelf region is that part which is basically a source of so much of marine resources, so many of marine resources. What kind of marine resources? So you can say these have some terrigenous kind of material, like the clay parts, certain gravels and pebbles, like, right, small shaped, small kind of stones, right. These kind of materials can be found inside the seawater on the continental shelf in the form of sediments. But continental shelf is also a region which is a major resource for the fossil fuels. Why I am telling you this? Because as I told you that so much of organic material get deposited between two layers of the sediments. So in the passage of time, these sediments, these organic material can get converted into fossils and then fossil fuels. So, natural gas, petroleum products, right, all these are extracted. If we want to extract these things from the oceanic region, we have to explore the continental shelf region. This continental shelf region is actually important to these kind of resources, right. So, in that way you will study the continental shelf. Now, what happened? After extending up to a certain distance, there is a break, there is a point from where the extension of the continental crust taken place with a more, not steep you can say, but with more slope gradient. That slope gradient is also discussed in your book. If you go through your book, in the book it is said that the slope gradient of that part is basically 2 degrees to 5 degrees. But practically if you find out, these are the regions which are not actually seen only the slope gradient up to 5 degrees. The slope gradient may be found from 5 degrees to 60 degrees. Somewhere in the world the region is having the slope gradient of 60 degrees also, right. So, this is the practical thing which you must remember, which you must take into consideration. Now, since it is also the extended portion of the you can say continental slope, and this continental slope extends further, right, in this way. So, when you go through your NCERT book, two things are given there. One is that this continental slope region, since it is having more slope gradient, that is why it has been named as continental slope, one thing. And second thing you should know here, that this continental slope, since it is having more slope gradient, so the sediments which were deposited here on the continental shelf, when extended towards the continental slope, they are not found on the slopes of the continental slope region. Why it is so? Because the slope gradient is more, and that is why if some of the, first of all, it is extended towards the continental slope in a very little amount. All these sediments are extended towards the continental slope in a very little amount. But the second thing is what? That if some sediments reach here, so they can move towards the end of the continental slope. One thing which you must remember here is that the point from where this continental shelf region attains more slope gradient, this point has been called as shelf break. I am writing here, it is called as shelf break. So, you can say shelf break is that point from where the extension of the continental crust takes place with more slope gradient, or you can say that this shelf break is the end point of the continental shelf. In any way you can think, shelf break, right. So, then after it attains the things. Now, though I told you about continental shelf, something about continental shelf, but here I would like to discuss some more thing about the continental shelf region, right. What is that? See, if we discuss this continental shelf region, you can find certain width here, right. Don't get confused regarding the width and depth here, because since the relief features are found under the ocean water, so depth is taken exactly from the sea level. Again, the relief features which are found on the continental part, their height is taken from the sea level. Likewise, if we want to define the relief features under the ocean water. Obviously, these relief features are found under water, and so that their depth can be assessed. So, this depth is taken from the sea level, right? It is very obvious. Now, since we are taking depth here from here to here, you can find here with this depth that the depth of the continental shelf is not much. Obviously, it is very obvious, because the extension of the continental crust is taking place in such a manner that it is having only the slope gradient from 1 degree to 3 degrees. So, if with this slope gradient the continental crust is extending towards the sea part, that means it has little depth there. And the extension, with the extension, that how much distance it covers towards the oceanic region, it provides the width. So, width is also there. One thing I would like to discuss here, that when you open your atlas, so when you open your atlas, you can see on the map, say you have opened the physical map of the world. So, when you open the physical map of the world, there you can find that along the margins of the continents, you have some white colored line, white colored region. As you move far from the margin, the color is becoming dark. From white it will become sky blue, then further a little darker sky blue, then further more blue color. As the color is becoming darker and darker, that means the depth from the sea level is increasing. The depth from the sea level is increasing. As the color is becoming white and white, that means the depth is lesser there. You can see the legend also in the side of the page of your atlas. You can find the legend. So, there is a point, there is a line which is showing the sea level. From the sea level you can see certain height, and also from the sea level you can find the depth. So, if you are finding the height and if you are finding the depth, so in the depth portion you can find out, first of all, the color is given as white, then as the depth is increasing the color is becoming darker and darker. In that way you can see the map. Now, what I actually supposed to say you, that if you are taking the map, if you see there in your map, so along the margins of the continents, at one side you can find that this line of white color is a little wider, while along some of the margins you can find that white color margin or white color line is very narrow, and somewhere it is absent almost. Actually, the narrow width and more width of continental shelf is controlled by one of the factor. Actually, it is not the correct sentence here which I am using. It is not exactly controlled. One can say that the width of the continental shelf is decided by these factors. What are the deciding factors? So, the deciding factor is that if along the marginal region of the continents, if there are some highlands, say some mountains are there. So, if there are certain mountains or mountain range all along the marginal region of a continental part, there you can find that the width of the continental shelf is narrow. See in the map, particularly on the western marginal region of North America and South America, you can find that there is a very narrow line, narrow white line there, or somewhere it is absent also. Why it is so? Because along the western marginal region of North America and western marginal region of South America, there are mountain ranges. In the North America it is Rocky Mountain Range, in the South America it is Andes Mountain Range. So since mountains or mountain ranges are present along the margin, wherever they are found, you can find that the width of the continental shelf is narrow. While on the other side, come to the eastern side of North America and South America, wherever you find that along the marginal region there is absence of mountain ranges and the marginal regions are actually having the plains. So there you can find that the width of the continental shelf is more. So it is one of the major aspects that wherever we find the width of continental shelf more. The width of continental shelf is found more where the marginal regions are having plain region, and the width of the continental shelf is found narrow where the marginal regions are having mountain ranges. Got it? In that way you can discuss the things. Okay. Not only this, we will also discuss here that the continental shelf region, as I told you earlier, that continental shelf region is having so much of sediments, deposition of sediments. That is why the continental shelf region is becoming a source of various kinds of marine resources. Okay. So these things we will discuss here. Okay. After continental shelf, I was discussing about the continental slopes. So as I told you that how continental slopes are formed. When after shelf break, the extension of the continental crust is taking place with a little more slope gradient, that portion has been defined as continental slope region. But like continental shelf region, you can't say that this continental slope region is also having deposition of sediments. No. First of all, see, it is very far from the coastal region. It is very far from the coastal region. So the rivers which are draining here and depositing so much of sediment on the continental shelf, these sediments when pushed further, so then after you can say they can reach up to the continental slope, and this is not particularly possible much. It is not much possible. Why it is so? Because these sediments are deposited there, and since the width of the continental shelf is more, it is very there is very remote chance that such sediments can reach to the continental slope region. If some sediments somehow reach there, so you can say that they just move towards the bottom of the continental slope. Got it? In this way you can see. Why I am discussing here that these sediments are deposited there at the bottom of the continental slope, because in some areas the width of the continental shelf will be lesser. Wherever the mountain ranges are present along the marginal region, obviously the width of the continental shelf will be lesser. It is narrow. And so that the sediments which are deposited there on the narrow continental shelf, they can be pushed towards the continental slope part. In that way you can find that actually after the deposition of sediments here nearby the bottom region, a portion can also be defined with the deposited sediment, and so that the top of such region, you can say the top of the continental slope increased. It get increased here. Why it is so? Because sediments are deposited here. Sediments are deposited here. Okay. Sediments are deposited here in this region. So, since the slope, the floor of the continental slope has risen, in that way you can say this portion has been named as continental rise. Continental rise. See, this portion has not been discussed there in your NCERT book. You can't find this. And it is written that the end point of the continental slope is considered as the end of the extension of continent into the ocean water. I repeat here, the end of the continental slope, the end point of the continental slope is the end of the extension of continental crust into the ocean water or sea water. It is said here. So, if it is said here, you can say the continental rise is basically formed on the part of the continental slope, or you can say it is formed on the end of the or bottom of the continental slope. So, it is also the part covered under the extension of the continental, and that is why you can see here that in this diagram the continental margin, the continental margin has been shown up to here, up to the end of this almost continental rise region, and this continental rise has been formed at nearby the bottom of the continental slope. But since it has not been discussed in your NCERT, so there is much chance that if you have been asked about the end point of the continental crust into the ocean water, so you must use the term end of the continental slope. But if in the option you have been given the term continental rise, obviously the end of the continental rise is taken as the margin of continent into the ocean water. Got it? In that way you differentiate the options which has been provided to you. Okay. If term continental rise is not there in the option, obviously you can choose the option end of the continental slope. But if the term continental rise is given in your option, obviously you can choose the term continental rise rather than only the continental slope. Got it? It is the thing you must remember. And one thing you can discuss here also, that since all these terms are using, right, all these terms are using the word continental. So, this also says that actually these are the parts of extension of the continent into the ocean water or sea water. In that way you can discuss here. Okay. So, up to continental rise, first of all we will discuss, and then after I will discuss about the other things. Okay. See here. The continental shelf is a submerged extension of continent, a relatively shallow underwater area extending from the shoreline to the edge of the continental margin. It is essentially the shallowest part of the ocean floor, where average water depth is about 180 meters. See, this is the average water depth. This is the average water depth. What is the average water depth? It is 180 meters only. In the huge ocean, this depth of 180 meter is nothing. Got it? So it is the average depth, and when we take an average value, obviously the actual value will be either somewhat more of that or somewhat less from that, right? So however the depth of the shelves varies, it may be as shallow as 30 meters in some areas, while in some areas it is as deep as 600 meters. So maximum depth of the continental shelf can be taken up to 600 meters, right? Up to 600 meters, minimum it will be 30 meters, right? It depends upon the area, it depends upon the a portion that got extended, portion of the continental crust that got extended into the ocean water. In that way you can see. Again, we have discussed about depth here. Then the width of the continental shelf vary from one ocean to another ocean. The average width is taken about 80 kilometer. Average width is taken about 80 kilometer. But the major thing is what? The shelves are almost absent or very narrow along some of the margins like the coast of Chile, the west coast of Sumatra, etc. On the contrary, the Siberian shelf in the Arctic Ocean, the largest in the world, it is the largest in the world, it stretches up to 1500 kilometer in width. Now here the example has been given. What is important, that the slope gradient of the continental shelf is gentle, about 1 degrees to 3 degrees, and as I told you that it is about 1 degree or less in NCERT it is given. The shelf typically ends at a very steep slope called shelf break. I told you, we have discussed about the shelf break, right? It is the shelf break. It is the shelf break. Got it? And what is important here, the shelves are very narrow where high mountains are very close and parallel to the coast. For example, Pacific continental shelf along the western coast of South America is narrow, only 16 kilometer wide, because of the presence of Andes mountains. I told you earlier. The shelves are wide where the coastlands are wide plains, though the continental shelves are generally wider in front of the river mouth, but the shelf of the Mississippi River mouth is exceptionally narrow. So it is an exception here. It is an exception here, but here what you have to remember, that apart from it, in most of the regions, the continental shelf would be wider where the continental margins are not having any mountain ranges. It is basically the plain region. And wherever the mountain ranges are present, these mountain ranges are actually lessening the width of the continental shelf become narrow. Got it? It is one of the major regions. Now, here we have to discuss the distribution of continental shelf in the oceanic water. So, including all the major oceans like the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean, if we take the average coverage of the continental shelf, so it is 8.6% of the total area of the ocean basin. But regionally, that means in Pacific Ocean particularly, and in Atlantic Ocean and in Indian Ocean. So if we want to define, so continental shelf cover 13.3% of the aerial coverage of the Atlantic Ocean. Here it is for the Atlantic Ocean. It is 5.7% in the Pacific Ocean and 4.2% of the Indian Ocean. It is very obvious that since the Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean, and where we can find the continental shelf? Only along the marginal area. So if I ask you that which is the eastern margin of the Pacific Ocean, so you can say the eastern margin of the Pacific Ocean is found along the west coast of North America and west coast of South America. It is the eastern margin of the Pacific Ocean. You can see in this way. It is the eastern part. And along the coast of Australia and along the coast of Japan and other island countries there in the northern hemisphere, it is the western margin of the Pacific Ocean. Got it? So, on the one hand we have the largest ocean in the form of Pacific Ocean. Secondly, if we find out, so along the west coast of the North America and South America, or you can say along the eastern margin of the Pacific Ocean, there is less extension of the continental crust in the form of continental shelf, and so that there is narrow continental shelf there. And along the western margin of the Pacific Ocean, so there you can find that along the coast of Japan, along the coast of Australia, again along the coast of Australia we have seen the Great Dividing Range. Along the coast of Japan you can see the continental shelf is very narrow. So in that way the continental shelf acquire only 5.7% in the Pacific Ocean. And in the Indian Ocean, since Indian Ocean is a very small oceanic region, but if you see that where the Indian Ocean, by which areas Indian Ocean gets surrounded. So in that way you can say again in the Indian Ocean there is very narrow continental shelf, and so that it covers only 4.2% of the Indian Ocean. Since I was talking about the marine resources which can be extracted from the continental shelf, so from here you can see that there is certain economic importance of this continental shelf region, and continental shelves are rich in marine life. These are rich in marine life and resources. They are important fishing grounds. Obviously they are fishing grounds because since they are gently sloping region and so much of phytoplanktons and zooplanktons are present there, these phytoplanktons and zooplanktons become food for fishes. So that is why they are important fishing grounds there. Okay. Not only this, they also contain valuable resources like oil, natural gas and minerals. Why it is so? Because since massive sedimentary deposits are received here by the continental shelf region, so continental shelf region, so you can say deposition of such kind of sediments for a longer time, they become source of the fossil fuels, right. So these are the things which is related to continental shelf. The major points which you must memorize in your mind is what regarding the width of the continental shelf, wherever it is found wide, wherever it is found narrow, right. So in that way you have to memorize the things. Now come to continental slope. As I told you, steep slope connecting the continental shelf and the deep ocean floor. Obviously it is the further thing, and if we found out the depth, so depth may be between 200 meters to 3000 meters. You can take here again this diagram. Obviously the depth is more here. From here to here you can see the depth. So the depth, since the depth get increased, obviously here the depth would be between 200 meters to 3000 meters. And one of the basic thing which is related here is the slope gradient. The slope gradient is found about 5 degrees to more than 60 degrees, right. It is about 5 degrees to more than 60 degrees, and it is given in your NCERT book. It is about 2 degrees to 5 degrees in NCERT. One thing which is written wrong here, it is not continental shelf, it is basically the continental, okay. I have to just clear it out. It is the continental slope. it is the continental one thing, and it is not gentle, it is steep. Continental slope, right, and the slope is steep. Slope is steep, right. As we have seen for continental shelf, the continental slopes represent 8.5%, right, 8.5% of the total area of the ocean basin, and particularly in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, and in the Indian Ocean, if we find out their aerial coverage. So, it is 12.4% in the Atlantic Ocean, 7% in the Pacific Ocean, and 6.5% in the Indian Ocean. Their distribution is found out in this way. And as I told you that the end of the continental slope is defined as the end of the extension of continental crust into the ocean water, that is also given here, that the slope boundary indicates, slope boundary where the continental slope ends. The slope boundary indicates the end of the continents, where? In the oceanic part. In the oceanic part, it is the end of the extension of continents, right. In this way you can see here. Now come to the third part. The third part, the third relief feature has been defined as deep sea fans and continental rise. Deep sea fans, remember here, the fan term we have seen in the alluvial landform. If you remember, we have alluvial fans. We have alluvial fans. And I told you that alluvial fans are formed always at the bottom or at the foothills, at the bottom of the mountain. Why it is so? Because the rivers which are coming along the steep slope of the mountain, just at the slope break, since the slope gradient becomes gentle, now the river's carrying capacity get decreased, and so that rivers deposit huge amount of sediment there. In the same way, you can say that since along the slope gradient, due to the steep slope gradient, the sediments were moving towards the bottom of the continental slope. Thereafter, the far from the bottom of the continental slope, the slope gradient becomes gentle. And so that nearby the bottom of the continental slope, there is much deposition, if much sediments are going towards the bottom. So, you can say deposition of sediment can be taken place here at the bottom or nearby the bottom of the continental slope. So, in that way you can say certain fan-like structures are found, or regions are found, those are called as deep sea fans. See here. Deep sea fans are fan-shaped depositional features at the base of the continental slope and at the mouths of the submarine canyons. Now, these submarine canyons are also found there in the part of the continental slope. We will discuss later on with the submarine canyons. Here you only listen the things and understand that submarine canyons also provide way for the sediments to move towards the bottom of the continental slope, right. These submarine canyons, wherever they end, it is the deposition of sediments there at the bottom of the continental slope. Okay. The deep sea fans resemble the continental alluvial fan. I was talking about the alluvial fan. So, in that way you can say deep sea fans, since these fan-like structures are formed inside the ocean water. So, that is why they have been called as deep sea fans. Okay. So, these deep sea fans are formed there. They are formed due to gradual deposition of sediments brought by the submarine turbidity. What is this submarine turbidity? Submarine turbidity, that means the ocean water below the sea level, the ocean water which become turbid due to the movement of organism, or you can say some of the endogentic forces, if certain turbidity or certain, you can say, disturbance has been taken place inside the sea water. So, this is called as submarine turbidity. So, due to submarine turbidity, you can say turbidity currents, these sediments are moving down the slope, and so that they get collected there at the bottom of the continental slope. When a few deep sea fans coalesce means they get aggregated, they get collide with each other, not collide particularly, they get you can say nearer to each other, they come close to each other. So, collectively, right, when a few deep sea fans coalesce, the resultant depositional features is called as continental rise. So, initially the formation of the continental rise starts with the formation of the deep sea fans. Then after, when so many of deep sea fans were formed, so when they coalesce, when they get aggregated, so the larger form of landform or the larger relief feature which is formed there is called as continental rise. What is important here, these are found abundantly in the Atlantic Ocean and Indian Ocean, but are few in the Pacific Ocean. The average width of continental rise is less than 300 kilometer. Obviously, since they are found nearby the bottom of the slope, bottom of the continental slope, so the width is found less than 300 kilometer, and the amplitude means its height, amplitude of relief is less than 40 meters. Obviously, it is not much. When we talk about the amplitude, what is amplitude? If you are getting confused, see, I am talking about this. It is called the amplitude from here to here. The thickness of the sediments, right? It is the thickness of the sediment which got deposited here on the continental slope. So, it is not much, as I told you that only some amount of sediments can be moved towards the bottom of the continental slope. So, the thickness will be not much, it will be less than 40 meters. In this way you can discuss the things. Okay. The depth of water over continental rise ranges between 1500 meters to 5000 meters. Obviously, it is so because now we have reached to the bottom of the continental slope. So, the depth of water that is taken from the sea level, so the depth of water would be more there. Okay. After that, we have deep sea plains. Deep sea plains, as the term plains is used here. So, obviously, you can say these are the region which resembles the plain region of the continental part. Since these plains are found inside the seawater, these are called as deep sea plains. And here with the diagram you can infer that these deep sea plain regions are basically found just above the continental crust. It is the portion of continental crust, so they are found just above the continental crust. These deep sea plains are formed. Now, like the plains of the continental part, these are also the flattest part, very smooth, sometimes undulating, but the almost flattest part of the ocean water or deep oceans, right? And these are also called as abyssal plains. These are also called as abyssal plains, you can see here. Flattest and smoothest regions in the world, and also you can say that somewhere they are gently sloping. So, if they are gently sloping, they are having the slope gradient about 0.5 degree in this way. Obviously, these are the deeper regions. So, wherever the slope gradient is found nearby 3000 meters, after that these are the regions of deep sea plains. So, the depth is found between 3000 meters to 6000 meters. that means the deepest, not actually deepest, because deepest part we will come across just after it, that will be the trenches, but these are deeper than the continental shelf and continental slope. Obviously, with the depth you can realize the things. These plains are covered by fine grained sediments, very fine grained sediments are found here. So, these fine grained sediments just like clay. Now, that clay also come from the continental rise region. It can be extended by the submarine turbidity currents, and that is why these are extended towards the plain region also. So, the clayey part you can say. If volcanic eruption takes place there, so volcanic ashes are also a kind of sediments found on the deep sea plains, right. And not only this, certain organic matters are also found, say so many kinds of animals are living there, those animals which are found in the benthic zone. Benthic zone means the deepest part of the ocean where animal can live. So, these animals which are living there, these organisms which are living there, after their death, since decomposition takes place there, so much of organic material can be formed there. So, organic material are formed there, and these are called as ooze, right, and also covered with ooze. Ooze are what? Oozes are microscopic remains of planktons, right. So, this deep sea plain region is also having certain organic material as well as the microscopic remains of planktons. Planktons means the floating organism. So, these planktons are, these microscopic remains of planktons are called as oozes, right. So, these oozes are also formed. One thing which is very important there, that though we have described that this deep sea plain region or the abyssal plain region is the flattest region, the smoothest region in the world, but at the same time you can say that these are having certain minor relief features like mid-oceanic ridges are found there, seamounts are found there, guyards are found there. These are the things which are found there in the deep sea plain regions, right. So, these are also the important things you must remember here. Okay. Then the coverage. We have seen the coverage of the major relief features like the continental shelf region, continental slope region. Now, then after we will discuss about the distribution of continental slope includes the portion of continental rise also. Got it? One thing you must remember, because continental rise is formed at the bottom of the continental slope. Got it? Okay. So, deep sea plains represent 75.9%. Obviously, it is so, because if we see, this is the sea level, continental crust is moving, extending towards the oceanic part, then they get converted into continental slope, and then after this flat region. So, this flat region covers a larger area in the ocean water, and that is why the coverage by the deep sea plain is taken as 75.9% on an average for all the oceans, you can say. At the same time, you can say that regionally they cover 80.3%, where in the Pacific Ocean. Why it is so? Because Pacific Ocean is the larger ocean, and we have seen that the distribution of continental shelf as well as continental slope is lesser there. So, the remaining part is covered by the deep sea plain region. Got it? So, in that way you can cover this. Then 80.1% of the Indian Ocean. In the Indian Ocean again we have seen that the distribution of continental shelf and continental slope is lesser. So, that is why the region of deep sea plain or abyssal plain would be more. And since in the Atlantic Ocean the distribution of continental shelf and continental slope was more than that of Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean, so here we can see that the distribution of deep sea plain is lesser here in the Atlantic Ocean, and that is only 54.9%. Now, if you remember and see your map also, in your atlas, in your map, when you find the region of Atlantic Ocean, from north to south, it is surrounded by the continental parts. Towards the eastern margin of Atlantic Ocean, we have European continent and we have African continent. Towards the western margin of Atlantic Ocean, we have North American continent, we have South American continent. So, from both the continental parts, you can say there is extension of continental shelf, then continental slope, and then only in the middle part it is the deep sea plain region. And since there is much extension of the continental part into the Atlantic Ocean, the deep sea plain region become lesser there. So, that is why the percentage of the deep sea plain region in the Atlantic Ocean become only 54.9%. Got it? Since we did here the major relief features, right, we come here up to ocean trenches or ocean deeps. What are these ocean deeps? So, ocean deeps are also called as deep sea trenches. These trenches are the deepest part of the ocean, deepest zone of the ocean basin, and it is said that they are generally located parallel to the coast, facing mountains. At the basis of the continental slopes they can be found, and they are also found along the island arcs. See, it may cause certain confusion in your mind, but you can see that if two plates are moving towards each other, one of the plate is denser, one of the plates is lighter. So, the denser plate just go beneath the lighter plate in this way. So, the portion wherever the denser plate is moving beneath the lighter plate, it becomes a deep part there, a deep part which can be taken as the trench here. It can be taken as a trench here. So, wherever in the world a plate is converging towards another plate, so a deeper part is formed there, that deeper part has been called as trenches. So, what is written here? These are associated with active volcanoes. Obviously, I told you that how volcanic eruption takes place. So, the region wherever the plates are moving beneath another plate, that region become prime or favorable regions for the occurrence of volcanic eruption as well as earthquake. I told you about Pacific Ring of Fire. So, that Pacific Ring of Fire is also an important region there. So, these are associated with active volcanoes and stronger earthquakes. They are deep, elongated depressions in the sea floor, primarily associated with the convergent plate, that is important, convergent plate margins or boundaries, where one tectonic plate subducts beneath the other. Got it? That is why they are very significant in the study of plate movements. Wherever we want to study plate movements, we can define that if two plates are moving towards each other, they are the convergent boundary, they are having convergent plate margins. If two plates are moving apart from each other, they are having divergent plate margins. Got it? So, the favorable conditions provided for the volcanic eruption is provided only by the convergent plate boundary. It is the major thing. And we have certain examples also. One of the deepest trench in the world is the Mariana Trench. You can see the depth here. It is 11,034 meters. In the length it is more than the height of the Mount Everest, that is the highest mountain or highest peak on the continental part. So, if we want to just adjust the Mount Everest region there in the Mariana Trench, it can be easily adjusted because its depth is 11,034 meters. Got it? Okay. And this Mariana Trench has been formed due to ongoing subduction of, what is subducting? Pacific plate is subducting beyond the Mariana plate. Okay. So, Mariana plate is there in the along the western margin of the Pacific Ocean, nearby the Philippines actually, right? In the region nearby Philippines if you go, so there you can find the location of the Mariana Trench. So, Pacific plate, when Pacific plate is subducting beneath the Mariana plate, right, it is a small plate there. So, in that region the Mariana Trench has been formed. Got it? One thing which is also given in your NCERT, that is if we want to count the total number of deeps or total number of trenches found in the three major oceans. So, the aggregate number is 57 deeps. And these deeps have been explored so far, 32 in Pacific Ocean, 19 in the Atlantic Ocean and 6 in the Indian Ocean. This is the distribution. This is the distribution, right? So, here we have discussed all the major relief features of the ocean basin. You must consider here these major relief features which are very important, and obviously you can get information from here, you can get question from here. If questions may be asked from the major relief features, from the continental shelf, the very obvious question is the factor which decides its width, it is very obvious. And also you may be asked about which are the regions for the various kinds of marine resources. These can be also asked from the continental shelf region. Got it? So, in this session I have discussed these major relief features. In the next session we will discuss about the minor relief features. Thank you.